you've worked with so many incredible artists, lots of household names. Who would you say you were the biggest fan of before working with them?
Ooh, that's tough.
So, for example, Kevin Dietz was a big fan of Placebo, and then one day he got the call that he'd be working with Placebo. So, just to kind of set the tone for that one for you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Man, see, that's a tricky question for me because there's been artists that I've been a fan of that I've worked with. I Mother Earth comes to mind. Tea Party comes to mind. But there's also producers that I've got a chance to work with that I was a big fan of. David Ogilvie definitely comes to mind. David Bottrill is another one that comes to mind, and so it's happened to be on a couple different levels. And those were really, really inspiring moments. I got a chance. This was also really cool. This was a big thing for me. Um, there was a record that I was working on. I got called in to work on it to do drums at a place called Reaction Studios, which doesn't exist anymore, but Geddy Lee was producing. And Rob Higgins was sort of like the main singer-songwriter in the band. It was called Rocket Science, but they're now called Dearly Beloved, I believe is the name of the band. And we got along famously, but I got a chance to work with Geddy. And that was really interesting because, first of all, he's kind of a hero. And their music, I mean, their music is part of my DNA. So that was really, really interesting, but also to see how he worked and he's a humble guy. He's a really humble guy, and he's incredibly generous, but also very sort of like, you know, um, professional in terms of his approach. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is really inspirational. And it was about 2 weeks after working with DMX, which was a complete, like, it was like take the 180 degrees and just flip it in the other direction. Right. And I just thought, wow, this is a really cool educational moment for myself, to kind of keep grounded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, it was sad to see kind of the decline of DMX leading to him passing away. And, but it was beautiful to see all the love that came out, for his music once and for him once that happened. There's one time where I was touring a mother and daughter through the studios, and I'm showing the plaques on the walls at Metalworks, and we get to a DMX plaque, and I give them a little bit of info about DMX and recording and all that. And the mom goes, "Oh yeah, no, I'm familiar with DMX." And I'm thinking, the mom's familiar with DMX. And it turns out it was DMX's manager. And she wanted her daughter to also get the education of how they could work in the industry on the business side. So I'm here giving DMX info to the person that knows the most about DMX on the planet. So
Yeah,
that's kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
funny.
That's really, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I didn't do that at Metalworks. I did that downtown Toronto at a place called McClear. But yeah, that was a chaotic situation. Wow.
Yeah. So you mentioned Ogilvie and Bottrill as two producers that you loved, that you got to work with. So Ogilvie, that goes back to the early Nine Inch Nails stuff. That's what comes to mind with him. And then with David Bottrill, I mean, he's a legend for the Tool albums, Anima and Lateralus, and he won some Grammy. I mean, he's worked with everybody. But is that where those names came into play for you as well? Was those artists or?
Well, actually, because I was doing it, no, I knew of David's work, Ogilvie. I knew Dave's work long before Nine Inch Nails because of Skinny Puppy. And but Skinny Puppy and 5440 and there's another band, new wave band out of Vancouver that who were quite big, but their name escapes me right now. And I'd been following him, and then I think he mixed a record by a band called the Doughboys. And I loved that album. I thought that was great. So I was a big fan. I was a big fan of his work. And so when was doing the Nine Inch Nails stuff, then I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. I mean, he's been doing this forever.
The industrial stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. He's been doing that work forever. And I, oddly enough, worked on two things with him that were completely, at the time, completely sort of out of the wheelhouse for both of us. One was sort of like a Canadian folk artist by the name of, I think the record was Lindy. I think that was the artist. And then we did a thing called Instant Star, which was a CTV TV show together. And like just completely out of that world altogether. But it was, man, we had a lot
that shows the versatility though, right?
Yeah. And then he was doing Jackalope.
Hmm.
And I would go visit him from time to time when he was doing Jackalope or parts of Jackalope in Toronto. So that was his band, but that was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. David Bottrill's worked with some of my favorite artists.
Yeah.
The first band, like, sometimes I'm a little embarrassed, but the first band and the first album that really stood out as my own was Stained. It's been a while. Stained Break the Cycles, the album back in 2001. It's been a while was like one of the biggest global hits. I heard my sister playing music before that, but that album like spoke to me, that teen angst, that anger, I could relate. And David Bottrill's done some Stained album, Muse, Corey Taylor from Slipknot doing Stone Sour albums. So he's just a legend. And he actually provided a couple quotes for the podcast, some kind words for some of our guests. So David Bottrill is passively a friend of the podcast, and someday I'll get the cajones to ask him to be a guest.
Oh, you should do it. He's a wonderful guy. You should do it. He's a very, very, very cool dude. In fact, I just did a thing. He's been kind of a friend to a passive friend to Envy and None. He we reached out to him once anyway for some things, but also he mixed something that I produced, artist by the name of Mandolin, and he mixed a song called Scream, and he just crushed it. Like he just hit it out of the park. It was unbelievable, but it was fun sort of reconnecting with him over that, and that was right in the middle of the pandemic. So we were like on the phone talking to each other, but I've had sort of an ongoing relationship with him throughout the years. He does some really wonderful work with an organization called Make Music Matter, and I've done a few things with him through students of mine for that organization.
So they go overseas, right? And they help out.
Yeah, they do some incredible stuff. They use music as therapy for people that have gone through great physical trauma. And they basically create an environment where they can create music and get this trauma out of them. And then they record it. And now I just found out not that long ago that I think they distributed through Warner Brothers or something. So something like that. One of the labels is actually distributing these records, and these aren't artists. These are basically therapy sessions that turn into like this musical thing. So it just goes to show you how beautiful and how powerful musical moments can be.
Wow. What's funny is this kind of ties it all together. Is you mentioned I Mother Earth. Yeah. David Bottrill did their Quicksilver Meat Dream album.
That was a record.
And tomorrow night I go to see I Mother Earth in Ottawa. They're doing all their albums, and they have both singers. They have Brian and Edwin. So they're going to sing on whatever songs and albums they were on. So it's like a big reunion thing. I don't think there's even an opening act. Like they're taking up the entire time frame of a concert. And Chuck Daly's the bass player for I Mother Earth, and his episode. So he was the guest on episode 32 of this podcast. And his episode is actually what broke this podcast everywhere. I had been doing the podcast for like a year and a half. And then suddenly, Chuck Daly from I Mother Earth, he was in the Salads before. He's played with Sum 41. He's played with everyone in Canada, Billy Talent. And because of that episode, then Rick Jacket from Finger 11 says, "Hey, what's your schedule like? I'd love to do a deep dive like nobody gets to do a 2-hour interview and really talk about everything." So that led to Finger 11, which led to Arkells, which led to Il Scarlet and everybody. And it almost all comes back to Chuck, me being a fan of his and meeting him when I was a teen. I was in line at 14 for his autograph for the Salads. So it was, me asking this guy I was a fan of, he says yes, and then all the doors have opened. And once you have I Mother Earth and Finger 11, almost every other band goes, well, if those guys are doing it, I should probably do it as well. So I have a lot of gratitude for Chuck and I Mother Earth. And tomorrow we're gonna celebrate at their live concert.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, what happened? It's funny that you mentioned the Quicksilver Meat Dream record, because that was the record that I met David on, and they had finished pretty much all of it, and he was coming into Iguana to mix it, and so we were kind of facilitating his mix, and I was just there basically assisting my assistant, making sure that everything was kind of going smoothly. But yeah, that's when we met, and that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun working on that record.
That's a great sounding album.
It is a great sound. He crushed that. He absolutely crushed. He crushes everything he works on though.
Yeah, man, having a good pair of studio headphones on, and just the guitar sounds, the drum sounds, there's this like dirtiness, there's this thickness.
But having said that, Jag is an unbelievable engineer. He's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. He's a wonderful human being too. And he and I've spent a little bit of time together, but he's just got an incredible set of ears on him. Like, I learned a lot from him working with him, just the way that he listens and the way that the detail that he hears. And I've been really fortunate. Those guys that are mentoring me, not even realizing it's happening, because I'm just kind of like a sponge.
Just soaking it all in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you're ever getting in a room with somebody that's that much better than you are at what they do, and you don't take that opportunity to learn everything, that's a missed opportunity if you don't do that.